Welcome, you've stepped into a quiet place tonight. The kind of place that doesn't ask you to scream, only to listen. Here the air is cold, the silence heavy, and every name carved in stone has something left to say. Tonight's theme is funeral ground horror. These are the stories whispered where the living meet the dead, where candles flicker in sealed crypts, and graves are not as still as they seem. You'll hear about the caretakers, the mourners, the wanderers who stayed just a little too long among the tombs, and what they brought back with them. These aren't ghost tales told for fun. They are memories of real people. People who thought cemeteries were quiet, until something inside answered back. So consider this a warning. You can listen, but you won't leave untouched. And when you try to sleep after this, you'll find it hard to trust the silence. Most people forget to subscribe before the lights go out. Don't make that mistake. Stay close. You'll want to hear every word. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments, and I like to know how far the darkness travels. Now, let's begin. The first thing I noticed was my reflection smiling when I wasn't. I was brushing my teeth. Bleary-eyed, half awake, and there it was. My mouth perfectly still. My reflection's lips curling just a little too wide. I froze mid-motion, toothbrush hanging, foam dripping onto the sink. It lasted less than a second. Just a flicker, then everything looked normal again. I told myself I was exhausted. I'd been pulling double shifts at the hospital, surviving on caffeine and vending machine food. Sleep deprivation does weird things to your brain. I spat, rinsed, stared at myself a little too long, then turned off the light. But even with the mirror dark, I could swear I saw teeth glinting back at me. I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment above a funeral home. Yeah, that's real. Rent's cheap because apparently, not everyone loves living above the dead. Doesn't bother me. The refrigeration hum from below is like white noise now. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wrong smile. The next morning, I avoided the bathroom entirely. I brushed my teeth at the kitchen sink like a psychopath, laughing it off in my head. But when I finally went to shower, I noticed something new. Someone had wiped a circle into the fogged mirror. A perfect circle just big enough for a face to look through. I hadn't touched it, and in the center of the circle was my reflection, except it was breathing. I actually screamed, like a full involuntary sound ripped out of my throat. The reflection's chest rose and fell, slow and steady, while I stood there perfectly still, clutching my towel. Then the fog cleared completely, and it was just me again. My heart was hammering. I wiped the mirror down, checked behind it, just drywall and dust. I even took it off the wall that evening, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the light or moisture. But behind it, scratched faintly into the plaster, were words. Don't look too long. I almost called my landlord right then, but what would I say? Hey, I think my reflection's acting up. Instead, I propped the mirror against the hallway wall face down. I didn't even want to see my shadow near it. For a few days, everything was fine. I started sleeping again. Work got busy, a body transport from a car crash, a night shift in the morgue. It's weird, but dealing with corpses made me feel more in control. The dead don't move. They don't lie, that's what I thought anyway. The following Friday, I came home late, still in scrubs, and noticed something strange. The mirror was upright again, not face down, not leaning, propped perfectly against the wall, reflecting the dim kitchen light. And in the reflection, there was a man standing behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. No one. The apartment was empty, dead silent except for the low hum from the funeral home below. I looked back at the mirror. Empty. But there was something else now. A faint smudge on the glass like a handprint dragged downward. The streaks were too long to be mine. That night I locked the bathroom door before bed. I didn't even want to risk catching a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound that made my stomach twist. The faint creak of the bathroom door opening. Then, footsteps. Bare feet on tile. I stayed still, pretending to sleep, every muscle tensed. The air felt colder. I could hear breathing, slow, steady, in rhythm with mine, but deeper. Then, whispering. Just one sentence, too quiet to be sure. But I swear it said, "You look too long." I turned every light on in the apartment, searched every room, checked the locks. Nothing. I even went downstairs thinking maybe the funeral home staff were moving equipment, but the place was empty, lights off, the smell of chemicals thick in the air. When I got back upstairs, the mirror was hanging again, somehow nailed back where I'd first taken it down. My reflection looked exhausted, but its eyes weren't mine. The irises were slightly darker, almost black, and when I blinked, it didn't. It just stared, wide-eyed, unbroken. I pressed my hand to the glass. It did too. For a second, I thought I could feel heat through the mirror. Not warmth exactly, but the kind of body temperature that shouldn't be coming from glass. Then my reflection smiled again. That same smile from before. Too wide. Too knowing I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. Every time I walked past the bathroom, I could feel it watching me. I even covered the mirror with a sheet, but it didn't help. The shape beneath it looked like a person standing there, breathing. I started hearing faint tapping at night. 3 slow taps, pause, 3 more. Sometimes from the bathroom, sometimes from inside the walls. I recorded it once. Played it back on my phone. The sound was there, clear as day. But under it, buried low, was another noise. A voice, whispering something like my name. That's when I noticed my reflection in the black phone screen. It was smiling again. I tried throwing the mirror out. Hauled it downstairs and dumped it by the trash bins behind the funeral home. When I came back up, my hands were shaking, but I felt relief, like closing a chapter of insanity. I slept. For the first time in days, I slept hard. The next morning, I woke to the sound of glass shattering. The mirror was back in the bathroom, hung exactly where it had always been. A long crack split through the center like a lightning bolt between my eyes. I stood there staring at it, my pulse hammering in my ears. My reflection was fragmented, broken into shards, but the thing inside each shard was moving independently. Each version of me smiled at a different time. One tilted its head. One blinked. One mouthed words I couldn't hear, and one, the largest shard, raised a finger to its lips. Shh. I called out of work permanently after that. Told them I was sick, which wasn't a lie. I was sick with fear, sick with the not knowing. I covered the mirror again, duct taped a towel over it, moved a shelf in front. Anything to make sure I couldn't see it, but reflections have a way of finding you. I started catching glimpses in other places. The dark of the TV screen before it powered on. The window at night, the back of a spoon, always for less than a second. Always that same wrong smile. Sometimes I'd wake up and my phone camera would be open recording me. Dozens of videos. Me sleeping, turning, twitching. And once the faint outline of a figure standing just behind me, blurred, face hidden in the shadows. Last night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a bag, booked a cheap motel across town, and planned to move in the morning. Before I left, I wanted one last look. Just to prove to myself I wasn't crazy, I pulled the towel down. The mirror was gone. In its place, covering the entire wall, was me. Thousands of faint outlines of my reflection, all overlapping, all whispering in silence. My face distorted 100 ways, some smiling, some crying, some screaming, and right in the center, one face looked perfectly still. Calm. It stepped forward. I don't mean it looked like it stepped forward. It literally pressed against the glass, and I watched the surface of the mirror bend outward, like something was trying to push through. I stumbled back, knocking over the sink lamp. Glass shattered. The power flickered. When the light came back on, the mirror was just normal again. My face pale, terrified, staring back, except my reflection wasn't breathing. I'm writing this from the motel now. It's been 3 nights. I left everything behind. Furniture, clothes, even my wallet. I don't care. I haven't looked into another mirror since. But earlier tonight, I went to wash my hands in the bathroom here, and there's a small mirror above the sink. I tried not to look. I really did. But when I glanced up, just for a split second, I saw it. That same too-wide smile, and this time, it winked. I broke the glass with my fist. Blood everywhere. The motel manager thinks I was trying to hurt myself. Maybe I was. I don't know anymore. I keep the lights on now all night. I cover anything that can reflect. My phone screen, my watch, even the window. But I can still feel it, like someone's just behind me, waiting for the next time I look. I know what it wants now. It wants me to see it. To give it that one moment of eye contact. Maybe that's how it gets out. If you ever see your reflection do something it shouldn't, don't blink. Don't turn away. Because once it notices you, it learns your face and it will keep smiling until you finally smile back. I stood frozen, my chest tight, pulse pounding in my ears. Every instinct told me to tear that towel off the mirror, to end it, to see, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the word forming on the glass like invisible fingers tracing from the other side. Then came the sound. A soft, steady tapping. Not random, rhythmic. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. It was coming from behind the towel. The sound was faint at first, but it grew clearer, sharper, closer, like fingernails on glass. Each tap made the metal towel rack rattle slightly. I pressed both hands against my ears and whispered, "Don't look, don't look." But the thing behind the mirror was patient. It didn't need me to look. It knew I could hear it, and hearing was enough. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the motel's parking lot under the buzzing yellow lights, wrapped in a hoodie, watching the black windows of my room. At 4:17 a.m., the light inside the bathroom flicked on by itself. I didn't go back in until sunrise. When I finally worked up the nerve, the towel was still hanging, but it looked damp. The air smelled like metal and something sour like burnt wires. The mirror underneath had bled rust-colored streaks down the wall. No water, no leak. Just stains shaped like long fingers. I packed what little I had and left the motel within an hour. I couldn't go back to my old apartment. Couldn't face that bathroom again. So I rented a tiny place on the edge of town. One of those short-term furnished studios with peeling paint and a bed that sinks in the middle. When the landlord handed me the keys, I made one request. "Can you take out the mirrors?" He gave me a look, half amused, half confused. "Superstitious, just can't stand reflections," he shrugged. "Whatever you want, man." By the time I moved in, every mirror was gone. The bathroom had a blank spot on the wall where one had been. I felt safer than I had in weeks. For the first time in what felt like forever, I managed to sleep through the night. 3 days passed before it started again. The first thing I noticed was the humming. It was faint at first, like a vibration inside my skull, the same frequency as the cooling units from the funeral home. I hadn't heard that sound since I left, but somehow it was back, buzzing through the walls. Then came the smell. That same sterile chemical odor of disinfectant and cold metal. I opened the bathroom door. The blank wall where the mirror used to be was damp. The drywall looked darker, soaked through, and in the wet streaks, shapes began to form, shadows outlining what looked like a frame. The air turned colder, and then, slowly the reflection appeared. It wasn't glass. It wasn't even solid. It was like the wall itself had become reflective, showing me standing there with wide eyes and trembling hands. Except the reflection wasn't matching me. When I stepped back, it stayed still. When I tilted my head, it didn't move. It just stood there, head slightly lowered, like it was waiting. Then it smiled. Not a big grin, not cartoonish, just a slow curl of the mouth that stretched too long. It felt intentional, like a person who's been waiting years for this exact moment. I stumbled backward into the hall, slamming the bathroom door shut. The humming stopped instantly. When I opened it again, the wall was blank. That night I had the first dream. In it, I was standing in the embalming room again. Everything was gray, the walls sweating condensation, the smell of formaldehyde thick in the air. The mirror from my old apartment was hanging above one of the steel tables, fogged over except for a small clear circle in the center. Inside that circle, someone was breathing. When I leaned closer, I saw my reflection again, but it was wearing my hospital ID badge even though I'd left it behind. It opened its mouth and whispered something I couldn't hear. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, the hum of the funeral home echoing faintly in my ears. On the bedside table sat my hospital badge. I hadn't seen it since the day I moved out. The next morning, I went to the hospital. I told myself I was just picking up paperwork, that I needed closure. But really, I needed to see if anyone else had experienced something strange. The morgue felt different the moment I stepped in. Colder. The hum louder. The stainless steel drawers lined the wall like sleeping coffins. Then I noticed the mirror. It had been installed above the sink near the autopsy table, a wide rectangle, spotless, almost glowing under the fluorescent lights. I didn't remember it being there before. I caught my reflection in it. It smiled. I didn't. I don't remember running. But I remember the sound of my shoes echoing down the hallway, the feeling of being watched from every polished surface. By the time I got to my car, I was crying without realizing it. My reflection in the rearview mirror grinned at me as I started the engine. I tore the mirror off with my bare hands and threw it out the window. When I looked back up at the windshield, I saw my reflection in the glass anyway, smiling. Since then, I've stopped trying to explain it. I don't tell people anymore. The few who listen just told me to get help, but there's no medication for this. No therapy for something that lives in reflections. I've noticed it doesn't just want to be seen, it wants to be me. When I sleep, I dream of the other version standing where I should be, walking through my apartment, touching my things, breathing my air. Each night, the dreams last longer. Each time it looks more real. And when I wake up, the position of the furniture is just slightly different. A few nights ago, I made the mistake of recording myself while I slept. I left my phone propped on the dresser, camera aimed at the bed. When I watched the footage the next morning, the first few hours were normal. Just me tossing and turning. Then around 3:04 a.m., the shadows changed. The outline of a figure appeared at the edge of the bed. Tall, still, the face barely visible. But when it turned toward the camera, I knew it was me, or at least the version that used to be in the mirror. He leaned over my sleeping body and whispered something right into my ear. The audio was faint, distorted, but I replayed it again and again until I finally understood. He said, "It's your turn." I don't remember turning off the video. I don't remember deleting it, but I must have. The next day, the file was gone and the phone's camera lens had a thin crack down the middle. Since then, my reflection's been faster, more accurate, like it's catching up. Sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth or washing my hands, I'll blink and it'll still be moving for half a second longer. I can almost feel it mimicking the delay, like it's practicing, like it's getting ready. Tonight, the humming's back, louder than ever. It's vibrating the walls. The light bulb in the bathroom keeps flickering even though there's no power running to it. I can hear the mirror again. That same dragging scrape. That same faint breathing. I've decided to do something stupid. I'm going to look, not a glance, not a peek. I'm going to stand there face to face and see what it wants. Maybe then it'll stop. Maybe if I confront it, it'll let me go. I've set my phone on record. If I don't make it, maybe someone will find this. Maybe they'll understand what happened to me. I'm opening the door now. The mirror is alive. That's the only way to describe it. The surface ripples. The reflection moving just a fraction faster than me now. It's smiling, of course. Always smiling. But this time it opens its mouth. I hear my voice coming out of it. "You shouldn't have looked." My stomach turns. I try to back away, but my body doesn't move. My reflection raises its hand, my hand, and presses it against the glass. The surface bends outward like water. Cold air rushes through the room, pulling at my clothes, my hair. I can feel pressure building behind my eyes like something's about to burst. The glass is breathing. I want to scream, but no sound comes out. My reflection leans forward, pressing harder, and the glass stretches like a membrane. Then a hand breaks through. My hand. Wet, gray, too smooth. It grips my wrist and everything goes black. I don't know how much time has passed. Maybe hours, maybe days. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in front of the mirror again, but everything on the other side was wrong. The room was reversed, colors dull and flat. The air heavy like water pressing down, and the reflection, me, was gone. Instead, the real me stood there on the other side of the glass. He looked confused, terrified, then angry. He pounded on the mirror, shouting words I couldn't hear. From where I stand, I can see everything clearly now. I can see his world. I can see the details of my old life. But there's no sound. No way to reach through. I raised my hand to mimic his movements and he froze. When I smiled, he stopped pounding. He looked into my eyes. And I watched as his expression shifted from fear to understanding to horror. He realized it wasn't me anymore. Now, I wait. The mirror world is quiet. There's no sound here, no time, no air. But I can still see. I can see him living in my apartment, pretending everything's fine. But every night he wakes up sweating, touching his face, whispering my name. He thinks it's over. He's wrong, because the longer I watch, the stronger I get. The glass between us grows thinner every day. Soon I'll be able to reach out again. Maybe I'll pull him back. Maybe I'll trade places once more. Or maybe I'll find someone new to look. If you're reading this, if you're hearing my voice, if you ever see your reflection blink just a second too late, don't panic, don't turn away. Because when you do, that's when it notices you, and once it notices you, it learns your face, it learns your movements, and sooner or later it takes your place. The first time I heard it, I thought it was the pipes. It was past midnight and the rain hadn't stopped for hours. The whole funeral home groaned with the sound of water pushing through the gutters. I was alone on shift, mopping the tiled floor near the chapel when I heard this faint, muffled sound. At first it blended with the storm, soft, wet, rhythmic. But then I realized it wasn't coming from the ceiling or the walls. It was coming from the viewing room. And it sounded like someone was crying. I've worked at the Harrow & Sons funeral home for 3 years now. Nothing glamorous, mostly cleaning, arranging flowers, prepping the rooms for wakes. The embalmer handles the bodies. I just make things look peaceful. Peaceful. That word means nothing after midnight. The crying came in waves, quiet sobs that rose, then faded. I remember gripping the mop handle like a weapon, staring at the door to the viewing room. The sound wasn't loud, but it was close. I thought maybe someone had stayed behind. It happens sometimes. Family members too lost in grief to leave when the lights go out. I walked toward the door, every step heavier than the last. The crying stopped the moment I touched the handle. When I opened it, the room was empty. The only light came from the candles by the casket in the center. The air was thick with that sweet, chemical smell of lilies and formalin. And the coffin, mahogany polished, perfect, sat closed in the middle of the room. The nameplate read, Clara Myers, 1987-2024. I'd set it up myself earlier that evening. I knew the story. 37 years old. Correccident. Open casket funeral tomorrow, except it wasn't open anymore. I remember blinking, thinking I'd made a mistake. But no. The lid was latched shut, and from inside came a single, low sob. I dropped the mop. It clattered loud enough to make my heart jump. Then silence, the kind of silence that hums in your ears and makes you afraid to breathe. I whispered her name like it might help. Clara? Nothing, just the storm pressing against the windows. Then, another sound, faint but distinct, a single knock from inside the coffin. I ran. I didn't stop until I was outside in the rain. Drenched, gasping, half convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. The night air felt unreal, like the world had narrowed to heartbeat and thunder. I called the embalmer. Ray woke him up. Told him I heard something moving in one of the coffins. He laughed at first. Pressure release, he said. It happens. Sometimes air pockets form when the fluids settle. But this wasn't air, I said. It cried. He sighed. You've been working too many nights. Go home. I'll check it in the morning. I didn't go home. I sat in my car with the engine running until the rain slowed. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard that sound again, muffled, wet, human crying. When I came back the next night, the air inside the funeral home felt heavier, the kind of humidity that clings to your clothes. Ray was already there, prepping another body in the embalming room. I asked him about the coffin. He frowned. What coffin? Clara Myers, I said. The one in the viewing room. He gave me this look like I was speaking another language. You mean the one that went out this morning? Her funeral was at noon. My mouth went dry. It was what? Family picked her up. Big service downtown. Why? I just shook my head. I couldn't tell him. I didn't even trust myself to explain it. But I needed to see the room. The viewing room looked different in the light. Fresh flowers replaced the lilies. The coffin was gone, the table bare. But there was a dark ring on the floor where it had been. Like moisture had seeped out from underneath. I crouched down, touched it. The floor was cold and damp. When I lifted my fingers, they came away slick with something thick and reddish-brown. Not blood. Not exactly, but close. I cleaned it up fast, heart pounding. I didn't tell Ray. I didn't tell anyone. But that night when I closed up, I heard it again. A sob. Faint. from somewhere deeper in the building. The sound came from the preparation room. That room always smelled of metal and bleach. When I pushed open the door, the overhead light flickered like a dying fluorescent bug. There were 2 metal tables. One held a covered body. The other was empty except for a set of instruments: scalpels, forceps, a bone saw. All clean. I listened. The crying came again. This time it was definitely a woman. Slow, breathy sobs, like someone trying to hold it in. I followed the sound to the storage drawers along the wall, each one labeled, each holding someone waiting to be claimed. The sobbing stopped. Then faintly, from one of the lower drawers, "Please." I froze. Every instinct in me said don't open it, but I did anyway. The drawer slid out smoother than I expected. Inside was a black body bag. The tag read, "Myers Clara." My stomach flipped. She was supposed to be gone. The zipper moved before I touched it, just a twitch at first. Then another, like something shifting underneath. I grabbed the edge of the drawer and pushed it back in so hard the metal screeched. The crying stopped. I stood there for a long time, waiting, shaking, listening to the rain outside. Then, from behind the drawer, faint as a breath, "It hurts. I don't remember locking up that night. I don't even remember getting home." But when I woke up, I could still hear her voice in my head. By evening, I decided I needed proof, something to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. So I brought my phone, set it to record, left it running in the prep room while I did my rounds. When I came back an hour later, the phone was still there. Screen black. I hit stop, hands shaking. The recording started normal. My footsteps, the squeak of shoes, then silence, and then 30 minutes in, the sound began, a faint scraping, a muffled cry, and then, clear as day, "Let me out," followed by a second voice, male, low, whispering right next to the microphone, "Don't open it again." I left work early that night. Didn't even clock out. I drove until I found myself sitting in the parking lot of the cemetery where we buried Clara. It was still raining. The grave was fresh, the soil darker than the others. I just sat there staring at it, the wipers keeping rhythm with the storm, and then I saw it, a faint flicker of light from the ground. Not bright, just enough to notice, like the brief reflection of a candle. I stepped out of the car and walked closer, mud sucking at my shoes. The light came from the seam where the earth had sunk slightly over the coffin. And then, a single, wet sob so soft I might have imagined it, but I didn't, because the next sound was unmistakable. Knock, knock, knock from below. I ran until my lungs burned. Didn't stop until I was back in the car, hands shaking on the wheel. When I finally looked in the rearview mirror, something was standing at the edge of the cemetery. A woman, barefoot, mud dripping from her dress. I blinked, and she was gone. I quit the next morning, told Ray I was done. He didn't ask why, probably saw the look on my face. I tried to move on. Got a new job at a supply warehouse. Started working days again. But some nights when it rains, I still hear it. That muffled sound through the walls, soft and rhythmic. Sometimes when I wake up, I swear I hear someone crying under the floorboards. And last week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small piece of polished mahogany wood. When I turned it over, I saw a metal nameplate screwed into the back, Clara Myers. Last night, I had a dream. I was back in the viewing room. The candles were out. The coffin was closed. The air smelled like lilies and wet soil. And then I heard her voice again, close enough to feel her breath in my ear. "You left me in the dark." I woke up screaming. The sheets were damp with something that wasn't sweat. This morning, when I went to wash my face, the bathroom mirror was fogged over. And there, written in the condensation, was a single word: listen. I don't go near funeral homes anymore. I moved to another town, new job, new everything. But I can't escape the sound. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's so faint I have to hold my breath to catch it. But it's always there. At night, when the house is still, I can hear it beneath me, like the earth itself is breathing, and when it rains, the sound becomes clearer. Sobbing, knocking, pleading. Every storm feels like a reminder. 2 nights ago, it rained harder than it has all year. I tried to ignore it, turned up the TV, drowned out the noise. Then the power went out. The house went silent except for the rain and that sound coming from somewhere deep below. I lit a candle and sat on the floor, covering my ears, whispering to myself, "It's not real. It's not real." But then from the hallway, I heard a new sound, slow, deliberate footsteps on wet tile. They stopped right outside my bedroom door. And then came 3 soft knocks. Not on the door, on wood, like knuckles against a coffin lid. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The candle flickered once, twice, then went out. The room filled with the smell of damp earth, and in the darkness, I heard her voice one last time right next to my ear. "You heard me cry, now it's your turn." I never liked working the night shift at Hollow Creek Cemetery. The air there feels different after dark, heavier, like it's pressing down on you. The silence isn't peaceful either. It's loaded, waiting. You can hear every creak, every shift of dirt. But the worst part isn't the silence, it's the singing. The first time I heard it, I thought it was the wind. A high, trembling hum drifting through the trees at the edge of the cemetery. But then I noticed the pattern, the rise and fall of the notes, the way it sounded human. Someone was singing among the graves. I remember calling out the hello. My voice cracked. No answer. The song stopped mid-note. That was 2 weeks ago. I've heard it every night since. Always the same tune. Always from the far corner of the cemetery, where the oldest graves sit, half swallowed by roots and moss. That's where the gravedigger works. His name's Walter, but everyone calls him Walt. 70 maybe. Skin like cracked leather, eyes the color of rain. He doesn't talk much, just keeps his head down and digs. People say he used to have a daughter once. Died young. He still brings her flowers. I never asked him about her, not until the singing started. It was last Thursday when I finally caught him sitting by her grave. The lantern beside him flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the headstones. "Hey, Walt," I said quietly, not wanting to startle him. "You hear that singing lately?" He didn't look at me, just kept his eyes fixed on the dirt. After a long pause, he said, "You shouldn't listen to it, that was all." Then he got up, brushed the dirt from his hands and walked away without another word. That night, the singing was louder. It came in waves, soft, trembling, then breaking into whispers. Sometimes it sounded like a lullaby, sometimes like crying. I told myself it was someone passing through, a drunk maybe, or kids messing around. But then I saw her, a small figure standing near the tree line, barefoot, pale. She was wearing a white dress that looked old, like something from another time. Her hair hung in wet strands over her face, and even from a distance I could see what she was holding, a bouquet of dead flowers. I froze, couldn't even breathe. She tilted her head, almost curious. The singing stopped, and then she turned and walked straight into the woods. No flashlight, no hesitation, just disappeared between the trees. When I told Walt about it the next morning, he looked older than ever. His hands trembled around his coffee cup. "You shouldn't go near her," he said. "Who is she?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the dirt under his nails. Finally, he whispered, "My daughter." I wanted to believe he was just old and confused. Maybe he saw what I saw and his mind tried to make sense of it. But the next night proved him right. I'd just finished locking the main gate when I heard footsteps behind me, slow, dragging ones. When I turned, the path behind me was empty, but the gate's chain was swinging, like someone had just brushed past it. Then the singing began again, closer this time. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand, scanning the graves. The beam caught movement. Something crouched low beside one of the headstones. I stepped closer, every instinct screaming to run. When I reached the grave, I saw the flowers, a small pile of wilted daisies laid carefully across the nameplate. And on the stone itself, something was written in fresh mud. Daddy. I ran straight to Walt's shack on the edge of the property. He was sitting by the window, candlelight flickering over his face. When he saw me, he sighed like he'd been expecting me. "She's awake again," he said quietly. My skin crawled. "What are you talking about?" He rubbed his temples. "She doesn't rest easy. Never did. What happened to her?" He looked at me for a long time before answering. "She drowned," he said finally. "In the old quarry pond. I buried her myself. Thought if I laid her here she'd be at peace." He looked out toward the trees, but she never left. That night I stayed in my car. Couldn't make myself go near the graves. But sometime around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock on my window, tap, tap, tap. I turned, and there she was. Her face was inches from the glass, pale and wet, eyes dark as mud. Her mouth didn't move, but I heard her voice inside my head as clear as a whisper. He left me there. Then she smiled. Small, sad and wrong, and backed away into the darkness. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, Walt didn't show up for work. His shack door was open, his lantern still burning. I went inside, the bed was made. The only thing on the table was a photograph, an old, faded picture of a little girl holding a shovel twice her size. Walt stood behind her, smiling, proud. On the back, in shaky handwriting, was one line: "Dig deep enough and you'll find her." I didn't want to understand what that meant, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. By dusk, I found myself standing at her grave. The headstone was cracked, the name half-faded, Ella Graves. 2001-2010. The ground around it looked disturbed, like something had been dug up recently and then covered again. My stomach dropped. That's when I saw the small handprint in the dirt. Fresh. The air went cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, not your skin. Then from behind me I heard Walt's voice. "I told you not to come here." I turned fast. He was standing a few feet away, shovel in hand. His eyes looked wild, wet with tears. "What are you doing?" I asked. He looked past me at the grave. "She doesn't understand she's gone. She still thinks I'm coming to get her." The wind picked up, carrying that faint melody again, the same one I'd heard every night. Walt dropped to his knees, gripping the shovel like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "I promised I'd never leave her," he whispered, "but I had to. The water took her." Then he looked up at me, eyes hollow. "She blames me." The ground shifted beneath our feet, a low, wet sound like mud being sucked downward. The earth over the grave began to sink, cracking open in slow motion. I stepped back, heart pounding, as a pale arm pushed up through the dirt. Walt screamed her name, "Ella," and dropped to his knees, reaching for her. I tried to grab him to pull him back, but the soil gave way completely. His hands disappeared first, then his shoulders, then his head. By the time I fell to the ground beside the hole, the dirt had sealed over again. Smooth, undisturbed. The singing stopped. The cemetery was silent. I called the police. They searched for hours but found nothing. No sign of Walt, no sign of disturbance. Just an old grave and a name almost too faded to read. They said maybe he ran off. Maybe I imagined it. But the next night, when I came back to grab my things, I found a fresh pile of flowers on the grave. New ones. And beside them, his shovel. Still wet. I quit that job the same night. I don't work nights anymore. Don't even drive past cemeteries. But sometimes, when the wind hits just right, I still hear her song. That slow, trembling lullaby drifting through the dark. And once, when I looked into my mirror, I thought I saw a small figure behind me. A girl with wet hair and mud-streaked hands. She was holding something, a shovel. I didn't notice the extra man until we watched the funeral footage later. At the time, everything felt like a blur. Gray sky, soft rain, the dull thud of dirt on wood. I was too busy holding my mother's arm, trying to keep her from collapsing as we laid my father to rest. There were 6 pallbearers. That's what I remember. 6 men, my uncle, 2 of Dad's old co-workers, my cousin, and 2 family friends. I even remember the way their white gloves stood out against the dark mahogany of the casket. But when I rewatched the video a week later, there were 7. The funeral had been small. My father wasn't a churchgoer, so we held it at a private cemetery just outside of town. Quiet place, no chapel, just rows of oaks and a dirt path leading up the hill. My cousin Leo filmed it on his phone, mostly for the relatives who couldn't make it. A few nights later, I asked him to send me the video. I told myself I wanted closure, but really, I just wanted to hear Dad's voice again. When I pressed play, it all came rushing back. The priest's monotone voice, my mother's trembling hands, the smell of wet grass. Then the pallbearers came into frame, carrying the casket toward the grave, and that's when I saw him, a tall man at the end of the line, right-hand side. Wearing the same black suit, white gloves, same solemn posture, but his face was wrong, blurry, like the camera couldn't quite focus on him. I thought it was compression at first, bad video quality, but as they walked closer, everyone else's faces were clear, except his. It was like he was vibrating, just slightly, like the air around him couldn't settle. I watched the clip over and over. I even paused it frame by frame. His gloves were clean, his steps matched the others perfectly, but when they reached the grave, he didn't lower the casket with them. He just stood there still holding on, and then, in the next frame, he was gone. No movement. No walking away, no blur. Just gone. 1 second there, 1 second not. I showed it to Leo. He frowned, leaned closer to the screen. Must have glitched. Maybe I bumped the phone. He rewound the clip and played it again. When the tall man disappeared, Leo paused it. That's weird. I don't remember anyone that tall being there. Neither do I said. We looked at each other for a long second, and I saw the same unease I felt reflected in his eyes. Then he forced a laugh. Probably some camera artifact. Rain, maybe. But when he left, he didn't take his phone with him. That night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't the image of the man that bothered me. It was something smaller. A detail I hadn't noticed before. When the casket was being lowered, the tall man wasn't just standing by. He was looking straight at the camera. Through the rain, through the crowd, through everything, directly at me. I tried to forget about it. I really did. But a few days later, Mom said something that made my stomach drop. We were sitting at the kitchen table. She looked pale, exhausted. I keep thinking about your father's funeral, she said quietly. About that poor man who helped carry him. I froze. What man? The tall one, she said. I didn't recognize him, but he was kind. He gave me his handkerchief. I stared at her. You talked to him? She nodded slowly. After the burial, he came up to me and said, "Don't worry. He's not alone." My blood ran cold. Did you get his name? I asked. She frowned, thinking. No, but his handkerchief had initials on it. What initials? WD. The next day I went back to the cemetery. It was empty except for a groundskeeper raking leaves near the entrance. I walked up the hill to Dad's grave. The dirt had settled unevenly, leaving a slight dip in the middle. Someone had placed fresh flowers there, not from us. White lilies, Dad's favorite. There was a note tucked between the stems, just 2 words. Still here. I felt this crawling sensation in my chest, like my heartbeat had shifted out of rhythm. I turned in circles, scanning the graves, the trees, the path leading down to the gates. Nobody. Just the quiet hum of wind through the leaves. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. I hesitated, then answered. Nothing. Just breathing. Slow and deliberate. Then a voice, low and rough, almost a whisper. Don't worry. He's not alone. The line went dead. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those initials. WD. I went through the funeral home's records, searching for anyone connected to Dad with those letters. No luck. Then I found something in an old box of family photos Mom kept under her bed. It was a yellowed picture, dated 1984. My dad and a group of men standing around an open grave, all smiling for the camera. Dad looked younger, maybe 30. In the corner of the photo, a tall man stood apart from the others. Same black suit, same white gloves, the initials WD embroidered on his breast pocket. I turned the photo over. On the back, someone had written, "The last burial at Hollow Creek." I asked Mom about it the next morning. She went quiet when she saw the picture. "Oh God," she whispered. "That's William." "Who's William?" "Your father's friend. He used to work at the cemetery back when it first opened. He died there." I felt the air go thin around me. Died how? She looked down at her hands. There was an accident. The grave they were digging collapsed. Buried him alive. She hesitated. Your father was the one who found him. That night I rewatched the video again. The rain, the procession, the 7 pallbearers. But this time I noticed something else. Every time the tall man passed near the camera, the audio cut out for a split second, like the world itself was holding its breath. When I slowed it down frame by frame, I caught a glimpse of his face. Pale, empty eyes. And behind him, faintly, another casket, not Dad's, older, weathered. The wood split and darkened with age. It wasn't being carried. It was following. I couldn't keep watching. I shut the laptop, my hands shaking. I needed air. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The night was still, cold and too quiet. When I reached the driveway, I froze. There were footprints, wet ones, leading up from the street to my front door, 7 pairs and 1 extra. The next day, I called the funeral home. Asked about the pallbearers, who they were, how they were assigned. The director was confused. We only had 6 names on the list, he said. No 7th. I told him about the man in the video. He paused for a long time. Then he said something that chilled me to the core. You're not the first to ask about him. Apparently, a similar thing had happened years ago, back in the 90s. A woman called the funeral home claiming she saw an extra pallbearer in her husband's funeral footage. Same description, tall, formal, gloves too white. She even said he handed her a handkerchief afterward, initials WD stitched into the corner. A week later, she was found dead in her sleep. Heart failure. When they buried her, 6 men carried the casket and 1 extra. I didn't tell Mom any of this. She was already having nightmares. Said she kept hearing footsteps outside her window at night, but a few days later she called me in tears. He was here, she whispered. Who? The man from the funeral. He came to the house. Said he had something for your father. What did he give you? She hesitated. A flower. What kind? She started crying harder. A white lily. That night I couldn't stay home. I drove to the cemetery again, headlights cutting through the fog. When I reached Dad's grave, the flowers were gone. Just damp soil and the faint outline of footprints. 7 deep impressions surrounding the grave. And 1 more at the head. A larger one. The ground there looked disturbed, like something had pressed hard against it from below. I turned to leave, but someone was standing at the gate, tall, still, black suit. White gloves, he didn't move, didn't speak. I lifted my phone trying to take a photo, but the screen went black. Not off, just black, like it couldn't capture him. When I looked up again, he was gone, but the gate was open. I left the town the next day. Told Mom to come with me, but she refused. Said she needed to stay near Dad. I moved 3 hours away. New job, new apartment. For a while, I convinced myself it was over. Then, one morning, I found an envelope taped to my door. No address, no name. Inside was a funeral photo, mine, same cemetery, same sky, same 7 pallbearers, and 1 extra, standing a few steps behind the group, face blurred, white gloves. I dropped the photo and stepped back, shaking. That's when I noticed something on my hallway mirror. Smudges, fingerprints, 6 clear ones, and 1 perfect white handprint, right over my reflection. The next night, I heard knocking at the door. 3 slow knocks. When I opened it, the hallway was empty. But on the floor was a folded white handkerchief. I don't sleep much anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see him standing behind my father's casket, holding on just a little too long. And when I look in mirrors now, sometimes there's a shape behind me, tall, motionless, just out of focus. I think he's waiting, not for me to die, for my turn to carry. The rain started just like it did last year. Same time, same smell, same gray sky pressed against the cemetery like a weight. I didn't want to go, but Mom insisted. Your father deserves to be remembered, she said. Her voice cracked on the word remembered. We buried my dad 3 years ago, but every spring, on the exact same date, we have the same memorial. Same pastor, same songs, same faces. It's like the day never moves forward. And this year, I realized it wasn't just déjà vu, it was happening again. Literally, I started noticing the small things. First, the pastor's eulogy. It was word for word, identical to last year's. Not similar, identical. He even made the same mistake halfway through, calling my father Daniel instead of David. Then there was the crow every year. Just as the casket's flowers get damp with rain, a black crow lands on the headstone beside his grave and stares at us. It doesn't blink, doesn't move, it just watches. I used to think it was coincidence, but by the 3rd time, something in me knew better. It wasn't coincidence. It was repetition, perfect repetition. I tried to tell Mom, but she wouldn't listen. We all grieve in cycles, she said. That's what healing is. But there's no healing in what's been happening because the people, the mourners, aren't aging. Aunt Linda still has the same gray streak in her hair, not an inch longer. My cousin's kid, the one who was 6 back then, still looks 6 now. I even saw the same raindrop splatter on the same flower arrangement as last year's video. I know because I checked. I recorded everything, and when I compared the footage side by side, every frame matched, same gestures, same words, same tears rolling down the same cheeks, like the world was playing back the same day on a loop. I thought maybe it was my mind, some kind of trauma glitching in my memory. So I stopped going to the annual service, but even when I didn't show up, it still happened. Mom said I was there. She said she saw me standing by the grave, silent, staring at the coffin, except I wasn't. I was home. That's when I decided to go back, to the cemetery itself. Not for the ceremony, but afterward. I drove out there a week later, expecting to find the ground disturbed from fresh rain or flowers fading in the sun. But the earth looked untouched. The flowers were fresh, as if they'd been placed minutes ago. The ground was still damp, and when I bent down to touch the soil, I saw something small glinting between the blades of grass. A pin, shiny, silver, shaped like a teardrop. It looked exactly like the one I'd lost the year my father died, the one I dropped beside his coffin during the first funeral. I turned it over in my palm, and I swear I felt heat radiating from it, like it had just been held. I went home and pulled out the video from Dad's original funeral, the one I recorded myself 3 years ago. At the 11-minute mark, right when I dropped the pin, I noticed something I'd never seen before. In the corner of the frame, half hidden by the mourners, stood a figure, a woman. Umbrella tilted just enough to obscure her face. She wasn't part of our family. She wasn't crying, she was just watching, and in every video, every year's recording, she was there. Same clothes. Same spot, never moving. I showed the footage to my friend Aaron, who's into digital editing. He thought I was joking at first. Same rain, same movements, same everything, he said, squinting at the overlapping frames. That's impossible. He ran a comparison program to detect motion differences between the videos. When the render finished, the screen lit up with white where changes occurred. There were only 2 anomalies, the crow and the woman. Everything else was exactly identical, pixel for pixel. That night, Aaron called me again. Bro, he said, voice tight. You need to see this. He'd enhanced the part where the woman's face should have been. The umbrella shadow was thick, but for a split second, lightning lit her up. She was smiling, not wide or cartoonish, just this small, knowing smile, and her eyes were open, looking directly into the camera. Maybe she's some groundskeeper, Aaron suggested weakly. I didn't answer, because something in my gut already knew she wasn't. The next morning I went to the cemetery office. Showed them the photo, asked if they knew her. The clerk frowned. No one by that description works here. I asked if anyone had scheduled multiple services at that same plot. Maybe some mix-up with paperwork. She typed for a while, then looked up at me, confused. Sir, there's no record of any funeral at that plot in the last 3 years. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? My father, David Cole, buried 3 years ago. She double-checked, shook her head. There's no David Cole in our records. I drove straight back to the grave. The headstone was still there, the name carved clean. David Cole, 1956 to 2022. But when I brushed away the dirt near the base, something caught my eye. The date. The death year wasn't 2022 anymore. It was 2025. This year, I stumbled backward, heart pounding. I checked my phone's calendar, April 17th, the same day as his funeral, 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, and last year, and right now. The air shifted, colder, denser. The rain started again, falling in heavy, perfect rhythm, and from the path behind me I heard footsteps, dozens of them. I turned. The mourners were walking toward me. Same faces, same clothes, same tears, like I'd stepped backward in time, and among them, my mother, smiling faintly, eyes glassy. Behind her, the pastor raised his book. We gather again to remember David Cole. I tried to shout, to run, but my body wouldn't move. The air felt thick, syrupy, like pushing against a wall. The casket appeared, same mahogany, same flowers. The pallbearers moved in perfect sync. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. Then I saw myself, standing by the grave holding Mom's arm, expression blank, eyes empty. The crowd passed through me like mist. My reflection, my copy, looked down at the coffin. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The rain hit my skin, but it didn't feel wet anymore. Just cold. So cold. The ceremony played out like before, word for word. When the pastor finished, lightning cracked the sky. The crow landed on the headstone again. I turned toward the tree line, and there she was, the woman with the umbrella, watching me. This time she moved. She lifted her head slowly, and I saw her face fully, pale, empty eyes. My eyes. Everything went white. When I woke up, I was standing beside the grave, alone. The storm had passed, the ground looked freshly turned, and on the headstone, below my father's name, was a new engraving. Beloved son, Thomas Cole, 1994-2025. I fell backward, gasping, clawing at the dirt. My chest burned like I couldn't breathe. Then I saw the reflection in the puddle beside me, the woman with the umbrella. Only, it wasn't her anymore. It was me. I don't know how long I've been here. The sky never changes. It's always gray, always raining. Every time I blink, the ceremony starts again. The same voices, the same tears, the same crow landing on the same grave. The mourners never look at me. They just move like actors in a film they don't know they're in. And at the edge of it all, my mother stands under an umbrella, smiling softly. Sometimes she looks right at me and whispers, "Don't worry, sweetheart. You're with your father now." I've tried to run. I've tried to scream. Nothing breaks it. The moment I reach the gate, I blink, and I'm back at the grave again. Same sound of dirt falling. Same crow cawing. Same song of rain on wood. Over and over. Like the world stuck replaying the moment I died. And every year, when the mourners gather, there's one more face in the crowd. This time, when the coffin lowers, I can see something through the gap in the wood. Another figure inside. Still, eyes open. It's me again. Another version. Buried beneath the last layer after layer of the same day. Repeating forever. I used to think this was grief looping itself, but now I know better. This isn't memory. It's rehearsal. And every year, someone new joins the cast. The rain has started again. I can hear the footsteps coming up the hill. Mom's voice, soft and trembling. The pastor opening his book, and above it all the sound of my own voice. Recorded, distorted, whispering from somewhere in the wind. We gather again to remember. I always hated the night shift. It wasn't the work itself, it was the silence. That awful, suffocating silence that filled St. Jude's after everyone went home. When you're the only one left in a building made to burn the dead, silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels watched. My last night there started like any other. A double cremation, both scheduled for after hours. One was an old man from the nursing home, the other, unnamed. The tag just said unclaimed. Those were the worst ones. No family, no prayers. Just me, a clipboard, and the furnace. St. Jude's was built in the 70s. Everything smelled like metal and old disinfectant. The cremator room was long and narrow. Concrete floors slick with cleaning solution. A single clock ticked over the blast doors, each click echoing through the vents. I'd been there 5 years. I knew the rhythms. The creaks before the burners kicked in. The hum of the cooling fans. That night, though, something felt different. The air was heavy, like the exhaust wasn't venting right. The fluorescent lights flickered every few seconds, and the camera feed on the corner monitor kept glitching, just enough to make me uneasy. I rolled the first gurney in around 11:40. The old man. I said the standard line, something I picked up from an older co-worker who said it made her feel better. Peace, be with you. Then I hit the button. The furnace roared to life, orange light filling the chamber. Everything went smoothly. I logged the time, set the cooling timer, and prepped the second body. The unclaimed. There was always something strange about the unclaimed ones. They came from hospitals, morgues, sometimes crime scenes, bodies nobody wanted, but this one felt heavier than it should have. The tag around his toe said male approx, 40s, no cause of death listed. When I unzipped the bag, I froze. He was smiling, not a faint smile, a wide one, teeth showing as if he was mid-laugh when he died, and his eyes were half open. I tried not to look directly at him as I loaded the stretcher. His skin had that waxy sheen, but the muscles in his face looked fresh, too flexible. When I pushed him into the chamber, one of his fingers caught on the edge. It bent backward with a quiet crack. I winced, whispered the line again. "Peace be with you." Then I hit start. The flame whooshed to life, louder than usual. The burners rattled. The temperature gauge spiked. Then everything went dark. I thought the power had gone out, but the control panel was still glowing faintly. The clock above the door had stopped at 12:03. The hum of the furnace faded to a low, uneven rumble, and then 3 heavy knocks from inside the chamber. I froze. You can tell the difference between a machine noise and something human. This wasn't metal contracting, it was knuckles. 3 slow knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. I backed away, pulse hammering. No, 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 I whispered. It's just pressure, heat expansion. But the air vent above me rattled violently, a deep metallic clang echoing down the ducts. The temperature gauge flickered between 1200° and 0°, and through the viewing window, for half a second I swear I saw movement, something shifting inside, a shape sitting up. I hit the emergency stop. The furnace shut down instantly, the roar dying into silence. Smoke rolled out when I opened the hatch, dense black chemical. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and leaned closer. Inside, the stretcher was empty. No bones, no ash, nothing, just a faint smell of burnt sugar. I stumbled backward, coughing. The whole room felt wrong, like the air had turned thick enough to touch. The intercom crackled above the door. Static first, then a faint voice. "Peace be with you." I froze. It wasn't my voice. The PA system was disconnected. Maintenance had cut it weeks ago. I reached for my phone, but the screen stayed black no matter how many times I pressed the button. Then I noticed the clock again. 03 still, and every light in the room buzzed once, flickered, and went dark. For a second, I stood there in total blackness. Then the furnace door clicked open by itself. The glow inside wasn't orange anymore. It was dim, pale, like light from deep underwater. And in that glow, I saw something moving, a silhouette crawling out, hands first, then shoulders, then a head. Still smiling, the man from the bag. His skin wasn't burned, not even singed. His hospital gown was gone. Just gray, damp flesh like he'd been underwater too long. He stood slowly, his joints cracking like old wood. "Peace be with you," he said. But his lips didn't move. The voice came from the intercom again, perfectly timed with his words. I stumbled backward, slammed into the door. It didn't budge. The magnetic lock only released when the timer ended, and the timer wasn't running. The man tilted his head, studying me. The smile never changed. "You said it first," he rasped. My throat tightened. What are you?" He stepped closer. "You open the door. You light the flame. You speak the words." Each step he took, the lights above him flared weakly, then died again. "You don't burn us. You invite us." I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a steel broom handle, and swung. It passed right through him. For a moment, his body scattered like smoke, then reformed, closer than before. His hand shot out and pressed against my chest. Ice cold, the room went silent. Even the air stopped moving. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then he leaned close to my ear and whispered, "It's your turn." When I woke up, I was on the floor. The lights were back on. The furnace was humming quietly, temperature normal. The clock read 12:17. The chamber door was closed. I stood slowly, dizzy, and checked the system logs. Both cremations marked complete. 2 ash containers sat cooling on the shelf, but both labels said the same thing, unclaimed. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, fumes, lack of sleep. But when I lifted one of the containers, I saw something burned into the metal, a fingerprint. Deep, perfect, mine. I quit the next morning. Didn't even grab my paycheck. The manager called me a week later, angry about the incident report I didn't file. Said the night crew found something strange in the furnace logs. Temperature spiked 3 times, he said. Once at 11:43, once at 12:03, once at 12:17. I hung up before he could finish. 2 nights later, I woke up to a smell, metallic, hot, burnt sugar, the kind that sticks to your throat. I stumbled into the kitchen, half asleep and stopped dead. On the counter sat a small, sealed urn, my name engraved across the top. Below it, unclaimed. It's been 3 months since I left St. Jude's. I moved 3 towns over. Changed my number. But last night I dreamed of the furnace again, except I wasn't standing in front of it, I was inside. The heat wasn't painful, it was waiting. And outside the glass, through the viewing window, I saw someone watching, a new operator, young, nervous. And just before the flames rose, he whispered, like a prayer, "Peace be with you." I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. The air smelled faintly of ash. I looked around my room and froze. There was soot on the floor, leading from my bed to the door, and written across the inside of the window, in black finger-drawn letters, "Shift complete." It started with the flowers on my father's grave. They were always gone by morning, every single day. I thought it was animals at first. Deer, maybe, or stray dogs from the woods behind the cemetery. But one morning I came early before sunrise and saw him, a man kneeling at the grave eating the flowers, not chewing them like food. Consuming them petal by petal, slow and methodical, like each bite mattered. I should have called someone, yelled, done anything, but I just stood there in the mist, watching, because the man's face looked exactly like my father's. Dad died last winter, sudden heart attack. He was buried in Willow Grove Cemetery, quiet, rural, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. After the funeral, I started visiting every day. It made me feel close to him. I'd talk to the headstone like he could hear me. Tell him about work, about Mom not sleeping, about the car still sitting in his driveway. I always left fresh flowers, white carnations, his favorite. They were gone the next day, every time. I told the groundskeeper, an old man named Clyde. He shrugged. Kids or animals, they always come for the new ones. But there were no paw prints, no stems left behind. Just clean, bare dirt, like the flowers had never been there. The first time I saw him was 3 weeks later. It was barely dawn. Fog thick enough to blur the graves into gray lumps. I parked at the far end, near the fence line, and walked up the hill toward Dad's plot. That's when I saw movement, a figure kneeling. He wore a dark coat, soaked through with dew, and his hair hung over his face. He was holding something in his hands. Petals, bright white even in the dim light. He lifted them to his mouth and started chewing, slowly, like he was savoring it. At first I thought it was a homeless man. I called out, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" He froze, didn't turn, didn't answer. Then, without looking at me, he reached for another handful of flowers and stuffed them into his mouth. The sound was wet, crunchy. I felt my stomach twist. I stepped closer. "Stop, I said stop!" He finally turned his head, and my breath left my body. Because it was Dad's face, not exactly. The skin was too pale, the eyes a little sunken. But the shape, the nose, the mouth. It was him, and he was smiling. I blinked and stumbled backward. When I looked again, he was gone, just vanished. The grave was empty except for the crushed stems of carnations and a smear of something dark on the dirt, like sap or blood. I don't remember driving home. I just remember the feeling, like something had followed me, sitting in the back seat, breathing slow and heavy. That night, Mom called. She said she'd been dreaming of Dad again, standing at the foot of her bed, holding a bunch of white flowers. He looked so peaceful, she said. He said he was hungry. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. I tried to stay away from the cemetery. For a while I managed, but curiosity is a sickness. It eats at you until you give in. So 2 weeks later, I went back, this time in daylight. The grounds were empty. Wind moving through the trees. Nothing strange except for the flowers. Every grave had them. All the same, white carnations. Hundreds of them laid neatly in rows, covering the grass like snow. My father's grave was the only one bare. I ran into Clyde near the gate. He looked shaken, pale under his cap. "You seen anyone up there?" I asked. He hesitated. "Maybe." "What do you mean, maybe?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Someone's been coming after dark. Thought it was you at first. Looks like you. Walks like you. But it's not." He looked at me then, eyes wide. "Whoever it is, don't come here at night." That evening I sat in my car on the edge of the cemetery, watching the hill through the windshield. It got cold fast. The windows fogged. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I saw movement. Someone was walking between the headstones, slow, deliberate steps. I grabbed my flashlight and got out. The beam caught him halfway up the hill. Same coat, same face, but this time I saw more. His hands were black, not gloved, black like the skin itself, soaked through, dripping onto the grass. He looked up at me, lips twitching. "Hungry," he whispered. Then he dropped to his knees and started tearing at the soil with his bare hands. I ran. I didn't care about my car, about the flashlight, just ran. When I reached the road, I turned once. He was standing again, watching me. And in the moonlight, I realized his eyes weren't my father's anymore. They were mine. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing chewing sounds, soft, wet, rhythmic, coming from the walls. By morning, there were white petals scattered across my kitchen counter. I hadn't brought any flowers home. I called the police the next day. They checked the cemetery, said they found nothing. No footprints, no damage. But Clyde stopped showing up for work. A week later, they found his truck parked by the cemetery gates. Engine still running. Inside, the passenger seat was covered in flower petals, and on the dashboard, a single note written in shaky handwriting. "He's feeding again." After that, I couldn't stay away. I had to know. So I went back one last time. It was raining hard, mud slick underfoot. The whole place smelled like rotting earth. I brought a flashlight and my phone. The live camera feed shook in my hand as I climbed the hill. When I reached the grave, the dirt looked fresh again. Someone had been digging, and then I saw him, standing beside the open grave. Face upturned, mouth open, rain filling it like he was drinking the sky. In his hands, he held a bouquet of carnations. He crushed them, pressed them into his mouth, swallowed, and then he spoke. "Help me, I should have run." But his voice, it wasn't like before. It sounded real, like my dad. I stepped closer. "Dad?" He smiled weakly, flowers sticking to his teeth. "It's so cold down there," he whispered. "So empty." He looked at me with hollow eyes. "You left me hungry." And before I could move, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. His skin was ice. The world tilted, and suddenly, I was the one kneeling by the grave. When I came to, it was morning. The grave was filled in again. The ground perfectly smooth, as if untouched, but my hands, they were black. The skin around my nails dark and sticky. In my pocket was a crushed flower, white carnation. I drove home in silence. Couldn't feel my hands on the wheel. That night, I tried to sleep, but my stomach hurt. Deep, gnawing pain, like something twisting inside. When I got up to drink water, I saw my reflection in the window. My lips were red, and caught between my teeth was a single white petal. Mom called again the next morning. "I saw your father last night," she said softly. "He was standing outside my window. He looked so happy." She paused. "He said you've been taking good care of him." I dropped the phone. Outside in my garden, every flower bed was empty. The earth freshly turned. It's been weeks now. I don't eat real food anymore. Can't. Everything tastes like ash except flowers. The first time I tried one, just one petal, it melted on my tongue. Sweet and cold like sugar water, now I crave them. Lilies, carnations, roses, it doesn't matter. I wake up at night with dirt under my nails and petals in my mouth. Sometimes I find footprints outside the window. Bare, black, wet, leading toward the woods, leading toward the cemetery. Last night, I dreamed I was back at the grave again, but this time, I wasn't standing over it, I was inside it. The soil pressed against my chest. The roots wrapped around my arms, and above me I could see him, my father, kneeling over the dirt, smiling down. He whispered, "Don't worry. I'll feed you now." Then he pushed a handful of fresh flowers into the hole right into my mouth. I woke up gagging, coughing up petals. My pillow was damp and smelled like earth. When I went to wash my face, something in the mirror caught my eye. My reflection was smiling, but I wasn't. It's raining again tonight. I can hear it against the window, soft and steady. I know he's waiting for me. The hunger's worse now. It's not just in my stomach anymore. It's in my chest, my throat, my bones. There's only one thing that helps. I keep a vase by the bed. Fresh carnations. Always white. I take one, tear off a petal, and press it to my tongue. It dissolves instantly. And for a moment, I hear him whisper, so close it feels like he's behind me. Good boy. I think I understand now. The flowers aren't offerings, they're invitations, and once you taste them, you don't stop being hungry, you just change what you're hungry for. Tomorrow's my father's death anniversary again. I already bought the flowers. 2 bouquets this time, one for him, one for me. The first time I heard the bells, I thought it was the wind, but the second time I knew they were coming from under the ground. I was 17 when I got my first job, groundskeeping at Hollow Pine Cemetery. My mom said it would build character. I just needed the money. Most days were easy, mowing, trimming, clearing weeds. But there was one part of the grounds we never touched. The oldest section at the far edge near the woods. Clyde, the senior keeper, warned me. You hear bells, you stop working and walk away. Don't try to find where they're coming from. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The first week went fine. The place was quiet, peaceful even. But on my 6th night shift, I was cleaning tools in the shed when I heard it. Soft ringing drifting through the rain, high-pitched, fragile, like wind chimes buried under dirt. I stepped outside. The rain had stopped, the whole cemetery silver under the moon. The sound came from the far corner, the old section. I could have ignored it. Should have. But curiosity's a curse, so I followed it. The old graves were half sunken, their stones cracked and leaning. Some dates went back to the 1800s. The bells got louder as I walked. Not random, steady. Almost rhythmic. When I reached the last row, the sound stopped. Right in front of me stood a single headstone. Marble worn smooth. The name was barely legible, Margaret Ryland, 1823 to 1851. And sticking out of the dirt beside it was a thin piece of rusted wire. At the end of the wire, buried deeper, something faintly gleamed. Clyde's voice came back to me. You hear bells, walk away, but I couldn't. I knelt and brushed aside the dirt. The wire disappeared into the soil, taut leading straight down. I pulled gently. It resisted, then tightened like it was connected to something heavy. And for a moment, just a moment, I heard a voice. Soft, muffled below the earth, please. Then the wire went slack. I didn't tell Clyde that night. He'd just laugh or scold me. But the sound wouldn't leave my head, the ringing, faint and desperate. When I got home, I searched online, Grave Bells Hollow Pine History, and there it was. In the 1800s, people were terrified of being buried alive, so they'd attach a string from the coffin up through a pipe to a bell above ground. If someone woke up down there, they could ring for help. They called it a safety coffin. The cemetery I worked in, Hollow Pine, was one of the first to use them. The next day I couldn't focus. All I could think about was that wire. I went back after sunset, flashlight shaking in my hand. The wind carried the faintest sound. Bells again. Distant but steady. When I reached Margaret Ryland's grave, the wire was gone like it had never been there. I knelt anyway, pressed my ear to the dirt, nothing. Then, faintly, like a breath against my ear. Too late. I jumped back, heart pounding. The ground beneath the grave shifted slightly, like something moved underneath. The flashlight flickered, and then I heard the bell again. But now it wasn't one bell. It was many, all around me. Hundreds of faint rings rising from the earth, overlapping, echoing through the air. I ran, didn't stop until I reached the gate. Behind me, the bells kept ringing, growing louder until the night swallowed them. The next morning, I told Clyde I was done working nights. He just nodded. Figured that would happen sooner or later. You've heard them too, I said. He looked out toward the old section. Heard them? I buried them. He told me that back in the 70s, when they expanded the cemetery, they dug up part of the old burial section. Found dozens of rusted bell mechanisms still attached to coffins. Most were broken. but a few weren't. He said he heard them ringing as they worked. Faint, weak. They ignored it, kept digging. And one day, one of the men, his brother, collapsed right there on the site. Heart attack. They buried him the next week. The bells started again that same night. After that, I couldn't unhear them. Even when I was home, I'd wake up at night and swear I could hear faint ringing under the floor. Mom said it was in my head. "You've been around graves too long," she joked. But one night I heard something new. A knock. 3 soft knocks from under the floorboards by my bed. Then, ting, a bell. I barely slept after that. I stopped showing up for work. Clyde called once, left a voicemail, "Don't come back here." The bells don't stop once you hear them. You understand? They don't stop. He hung up before I could call back. 2 days later, the police found him. He'd died in his sleep, they said. Natural causes. When they buried him at Hollow Pine, I went to the service. As they lowered the casket, I noticed something small hanging near the headstone, a silver bell, brand new. That night, the ringing came again, louder. Followed it out back to the woods behind our house. The sound led me straight to a patch of soil that looked freshly disturbed. The dirt pulsed slightly like something breathing underneath, and when I knelt, I saw it. A thin wire sticking out of the ground. I didn't touch it, but it moved, tugged gently. Then the bell sound came again, so close I could feel it vibrate through my bones. "Ding, ding, please," a voice whispered beneath me. I ran inside, locked every door, turned up the TV, but the bells followed. Through the floor, through the walls, faint but constant. They didn't stop until sunrise. When I checked outside, the patch of dirt was undisturbed again, and the wire was gone. I tried to tell myself I was losing it, until the funeral home called, said they'd made an error with Clyde's burial records. Apparently, his coffin hadn't been sealed properly when they received it, and inside, his hands were missing 2 fingers, like he'd been trying to dig his way out. I didn't go to work again after that, quit for good, but the bells didn't stop. If anything, they got louder. Sometimes I hear them in the shower drain, in the hum of the fridge. In my dreams, always the same pattern. 3 quick chimes, then silence, then 1 long ring. I tried to record them once, but the playback is always blank. Just static. Last night was the worst. The noise woke me around 3 a.m., loud, echoing through the whole house. When I stepped into the hallway, my feet hit something soft. Flower petals. White ones scattered from my room to the front door. The door itself was wide open, and outside, the air shimmered with sound, like hundreds of tiny bells all ringing at once. I followed it, down the path, across the empty street, to the cemetery gate. They were all ringing now, every grave in that old section trembling like a struck string. The air felt heavy, electric, and then one by one the headstones started to shift. The soil rippled. Hands, gray, skeletal, pressed through the dirt, clutching at the air. Each one had a small, rusted bell tied to its wrist, and all of them were ringing. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, from beneath the ground, a voice I recognized, Clyde's. "You shouldn't have listened." The ground at my feet split open. A hand shot out, grabbed my ankle, cold as stone. The bell tied to its wrist jingled softly as it pulled. I fell forward, face hitting dirt, and I swear I felt something breathing just beneath the surface. Hundreds of lungs, exhaling at once. The last thing I heard before I blacked out was one final bell. Loud, clear. Ding. I woke up in my bed. Morning light spilling across the room. For a moment, I thought it was a nightmare, until I saw the dirt, footprints, leading from the door to my bed, and on my nightstand, a small silver bell. Brand new, still warm. I packed and left town that day. Didn't even tell Mom, but the bells followed me, sometimes faint, sometimes loud, in hotel rooms. On the bus, in the quiet moments right before I fall asleep, always the same rhythm, 3 short, 1 long. It's happening again now as I write this. The walls are vibrating softly. The sound's getting closer, and through the floorboards, I can hear dirt shifting. There's a wire pressing up through the carpet by my bed. I can see the loop, forming, the small metal bell attached to the end. It's moving on its own, tugging, waiting. I understand now. They're not warning bells, they're invitations. Each ring, a door opening. Each chime, another name added to the soil. The sound is deafening now. My chest feels heavy. The floorboards are cracking. The last thing I see before everything turns dark is the bell beside me. It's shining brighter than before, shaking so hard it almost lifts from the floor. And faintly beneath the ringing, a whisper that chills me to the bone. We saved you a place. The candle shouldn't have been burning. That's the first thing I noticed. It was sitting inside a sealed crypt, door bolted shut, stone edges fused with decades of grime. And yet, through the little iron grate in the front, I saw the flame. Flickering, steady, alive. There was no way anyone had been inside that crypt in over 70 years, and still, someone had left a fresh candle burning inside. I work for the city maintenance department, mostly old buildings, sometimes cemeteries. Last winter they sent me to St. Aurelia's, the oldest cemetery in the county. The place was falling apart. Collapsed headstones, flooded crypts, mold eating through marble. They told me, just document the damages. Don't open anything. I went alone. It was early morning. Fog hanging low, everything damp and quiet except for my boots squelching in the mud. The crypts lined the north edge, built into a hill. Most were sealed decades ago. No visitors, no fresh flowers, just stone and silence. Until I reached Crypt 47. At first I noticed the smell, wax and smoke, soft, warm, fresh. I leaned closer. The iron grate over the door had rusted into delicate lace, but through it I saw light, a faint golden flicker, moving slow and steady. I crouched, squinting through the slot. Inside, just visible in the darkness, a single white candle stood on the coffin lid. The flame burned tall, unwavering, no soot, no draft. It looked like it had been lit minutes ago. I stepped back, uneasy. My breath fogged the air. The door was sealed with iron bolts and a concrete frame, no gaps, no signs of tampering. I took a photo for documentation. My phone showed the timestamp as 9:47 a.m. Then I heard it, a sound from inside. Soft, like something dragging across stone. I froze. The sound came again, a slow scrape, then a faint thump, something moving inside the crypt. I told myself it was air pressure, or rats, or anything normal. Still, I backed away, heart pounding. By the time I reached the next row, the fog had thickened. I turned once, just once, to look back. The light was gone. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. The flame was too perfect, too still, like it existed in a space where air didn't matter. I went through my photos on the computer. The shot of the crypt looked normal, but when I zoomed in, I saw something else. In the dark corner behind the coffin, barely visible, was the outline of a hand, pressed against the stone wall. Fingers curled. Pale. The next day, I told my supervisor. He laughed. Probably just light refraction. Moisture does weird things. He didn't even look at the photo. So that night, I went back. The cemetery was darker than before. My flashlight cut a thin beam through the mist. The path to Crypt 47 felt longer this time. When I reached it, I stopped breathing. The light was back. The same candle, same spot, burning like nothing had changed, except the grate wasn't rusted anymore. The iron was clean, black and smooth, like it had been scrubbed, and carved into the stone above the door was a new mark, fresh, shallow, sharp, a single word: return. My chest tightened. I took a step back. Then I saw movement inside. Something shifted in the light. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, leaning toward the candle. I stumbled back, tripping over a cracked headstone. My flashlight hit the ground, the beam spinning wildly. When I grabbed it and looked again, the light inside was gone. No candle, just darkness. But the smell of warm wax hung in the air, and through the grate, I saw faint smoke curling up from the coffin. I left immediately. Didn't even look back until I reached my truck. But as I opened the door, something fell out of my coat pocket. A small piece of wax. Soft, white, still warm. I hadn't touched the candle. The next morning, I got a call from work. Another employee, Victor, had been sent to the same site. He was supposed to take over my section. He didn't come back. They found his truck by the cemetery gates, engine still running. Inside the passenger seat was a melted candle and his phone. The last photo on it showed the crypt, door wide open. No light inside, just empty stone. The police sealed off the area for 2 days. They said it was vandalism, maybe grave robbing. When they reopened it, I went back to finish my report. I shouldn't have. Crypt 47 looked different again. The bolts were back. The door sealed. No marks, no word return. Like it had been rebuilt overnight. But there was something new. At the base of the door, pressed into the mud, was a single footprint. Bare. Small. Like a child's. And beside it, a thin trail of melted wax leading into the grass. That night, I woke to a smell. Wax and smoke. It drifted through the house, faint but unmistakable. I followed it to the hallway. The air was cold. And there, on my kitchen counter, was a white candle, burning, slow, steady flame, no soot, no matches anywhere nearby. I tried to blow it out. The flame flickered but didn't die. I ran water over it. It hissed, but the light didn't fade. I smashed it into the sink. The wax split in two, but both halves burned on, flames identical. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. When I answered, I heard nothing at first, just static. Then a voice, soft and wet, like someone speaking through mud. "Thank you for returning." The call ended. The candles went out. For 3 nights I didn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me jump. Then, on the 4th night, I woke to the smell again. But this time, it wasn't in my kitchen. It was coming from under my bed. I leaned down, heart pounding. In the shadows, a faint orange glow pulsed slowly, like something breathing light. I lifted the bed skirt. A single candle sat there, burning bright. And behind it, pressed against the floorboards, a pale hand. Still. Unmoving, wax dripped from its fingers like blood. I screamed, kicked back, slammed the bedroom door shut. When I opened it again, minutes later, the hand was gone. The candle, too. But the wax trail led to my window, out into the yard, and at the very end of it, on the grass, was a single footprint. Small. Bare. Pointing toward the street. I called in sick the next day, told my supervisor I wasn't going back to St. Aurelia's. He didn't argue. Said I wasn't the only one seeing strange things lately. Apparently, several workers had found candles, burning, unexplainable, in sealed crypts across the property. And each time they removed one, it reappeared somewhere else. Always lit. Always fresh. 2 weeks later, the city shut down the cemetery. They said it was for safety renovations, but I know better. I drove past one evening, couldn't help myself. The gates were locked, but through the bars I saw a faint glow, hundreds of tiny lights flickering between the tombs. Candles, everywhere. That night I dreamed I was underground, lying in a coffin. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. My chest was heavy. Above me I heard a voice. "Return what you took." I looked down, and in my hands was a candle, burning steady, but I couldn't let go. My fingers had melted into the wax. The flame climbed higher, licking my skin, and I woke up gasping. My palms were warm, sticky. When I turned on the light, there were faint burn marks on my sheets, and the smell of smoke. It's been a month now. I've moved 2 cities away, but sometimes when the house gets quiet at night, I smell wax again. Once I found a small burn mark on my wall, shaped like a handprint. Another time, my reflection in the window flickered, like a candlelight passed behind it. I don't tell anyone anymore. They wouldn't believe me, but I know what it means. They never wanted us to open that crypt, because whatever was sealed inside wasn't meant to stay dark. It burns still, waiting for anyone foolish enough to notice. I keep a candle on my desk now, unlit. White. Sometimes I think I hear it whisper, soft, almost pleading, like it wants me to strike a match. Just one. Just to see if it still burns the same way it did that morning. But I won't, because if I light it, I know exactly whose hand will appear beside it again. And this time she won't be asking to return. She'll be asking me to join.